Hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Well, it's the end of March and I can't believe I made it. I read a lot of books, not only mysteries, which I'm going to talk about today a little bit later, because I was a co-host of, or I am a co-host of March Mystery Madness, but I also got into a lot of other books almost by accident, and it's a lot. So without further ado, I'm going to just jump into it because March was a lot. I first want to talk about Muriel Sparks, because I got into reading Muriel Sparks in the beginning of the month, and I talked about her first book that, now she's famous for The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which I haven't read yet, and I will read it. I promise I will read it. But I've had a very on and off experience with her that I wanted to discuss before I got into the other books that I read, which one is Anton Chekhov's The Cherry Orchard, which I'm not going to talk about today except to say that I have to reread it because it was a lot that I'm not used to, Russian literature. It might be the first Russian book that I've ever read, and I loved it. But back to Muriel Sparks. Okay, so I started out in the beginning of the month, and I'll put a GIF here, or a cover here, A Far Cry From Kensington. And A Far Cry From Kensington, I really enjoyed it. I got it from the book Lust, and basically it's about, well, it's set in Kensington, rooming house, and I talked about this before, but I'm just going to go over it and why I liked it. It was quirky, it was a dark comedy, but it was about a rooming house right after the war, where a number of folk who cook on gas rings, share the bathroom down the hall, and watch a couple in the house next door having arguments, a husband and a wife. So we have a landlady, a medical student, two young people, and a troubled Polish emigre dressmaker. But most importantly, there is a villain, annoying villain, who we see from the beginning to the end of the book. I didn't love this book, but I said I'm going to go on with Muriel Sparks. And to be honest, it was a downhill climb from there. Then I read The Finishing School. Very short book. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to have notes for this because there's a lot. There's a lot of books. So what I said was, this was an awful book by a brilliant author, and that it still has value. Dark comedy, again, that wasn't funny. Two writers, one a teacher and one of his students, play a cat and mouse game in a privately run by a husband and wife team, Finishing School. The husband has writer's block, and the student is finishing a book. He's 17, and the publishers are vying for that book because he's so young. And the teacher is jealous, and hypocrisy. I thought that the author got lost in a lot of characters, and toward the end I was saying, without spoiling the book, I said, what is going on here? But I think I gave it 4 stars. So this was my second best experience, or maybe I gave it 3 stars, I can't remember. I think I gave it 4. Okay, so then the horrible book that I read last night, and I say horrible because in my opinion it was rubbish, and that is The Driver's Seat by Muriel Sparks. And here's a photo of her, very, very classy photo from maybe the 60s. And this was written in 71, I think. Yeah, 71. And if I want to tell you what it's about, I really can't, because I know what I think it's about. I don't know what she wanted to do. And to be honest, if she had a higher literary ambition, I didn't get it, and I don't care, because what I think it's about, or what I got from it, it wasn't a comedy at all. It was more of a horror story. But in the horror story, there is a mentally ill woman. And I'm saying this, she didn't say this. A mentally ill woman who, I don't know why you would want to spoil that, you would want to read this book, but in case, it did get some good reviews, so I'm not going to spoil it, though she tells you basically, it's more than foreshadowing. She's telling you what's going to happen without really telling you exactly until the end, but you know it's not going to be good. This mentally disturbed woman goes on vacation, but before she goes on vacation, there's glimpses of how mentally ill and disturbed she really is. And I just felt very uneasy about reading about somebody who definitely was on a path to destruction, and have it written about almost in a comedy, in a comedic way. I found it disturbing. I found everything about it disturbing. I thought it was misogynist, even though it was written by a woman. Now, I felt it was it was sort of gratuitous, almost violence, and yet it wasn't violent really until a certain part of the story. I felt my skin crawl. I really didn't like this book. So I thought to myself, should I read something else by this author? Because I really think that she's a good author. I just thought that maybe she was trying to bring out, like I said, I don't care, but something, because it was written in the 70s in a southern town, and she goes on vacation, this disturbed woman, and basically it was boring as well. And for such a short book, it was boring, and I hated it. Okay, so why do I have another book? Because this one seems better. It's called Loitering with Intent. And I plan to read The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie as well. And this one I haven't read yet, so it's not really a wrap-up. I'll just give you a little feel for it. How wonderful it feels to be an artist and a woman in the 20th century. The year is 1949. The place London, the speaker Flora Talbot, an inspiring young writer on the grubby edge of the literary world. Loitering with Intent is her memoir at that time in her life when I went on my way rejoicing. That way, as in any novel, is full of unexpected plot twists, wonderfully contradictory characters, and a dialogue of matchless wit. The reason that I said I would go on with it is because it says, when Flora becomes secretary to the Autobiographical Association, a motley collection of egoists who are composing their memoirs in advance to avoid lapses of memory. It sounded funny. It sounded like something that I would really get along with. And like I said, I'm not giving up on Muriel Sparks yet. But I just wanted to tell you some of the things that I've been reading beside mysteries. Okay, now on to the mysteries. I talked about a lot of these mysteries before because I was doing a recreation of Janelle's Too Fond of Books creation, where she would Mystery Monday, which I did a final episode. So I'm not going to trouble you with going on and on about it, but I did want to talk about some of the ones that I thought were good. Now, I got into, and I'm loving my experience with George Simenon. He created the Maigret mysteries, and there's a lot of them. And I read quite a few this this month. But my favorite I want to talk about, and I'll have it here, it's My Friend Maigret. And I loved it. It's a wonderful setting, great characterization, and an aging but distinguished Maigret. These are my notes that I wrote down. There was some ageist and anti-female remarks, but the author allows the women to have comebacks that for 1949 shows Maigret as a man who likes women. In other words, he's not a misogynist any more than the men were at that time. So the friend is a young officer from Scotland Yard, and he's sent to study the methods of the famous Maigret. The details of the differences between the cultures of England and France were hilarious. The plot of the mystery, although good, was almost beside the point. The scenery of the south of France was, and a small island off the south of France, was amazing. The way that Simenon describes the day-to-day life of the island people there, and the people who come there because they're coming there to escape either boredom, their lives, and he mentions in there, it's almost like when Gauguin, and I'm saying this wrong, the painter, went to the south, to Tahiti, to get away from his life. In that way, they're getting away from their lives, whether it be gangster life or just being bored. So there's English people there, there's French people, and of course there's a murder. But this is my favorite Maigret so far, and I recommend it highly. Let me go through just talk about some books that I talked about before, and I might have some over here. Of course, I love the book Some Lie and Some Die that I talked about on my Mystery Mondays, where there's a festival like a Woodstock festival in that small town, and it's just a wonderful book. And I'll have my video down below of that Mystery Monday where I talk about Some Lie and Some Die by Ruth Rendell. I also read Case Histories by Kate Atkinson. Now, this is my first introduction to Kate Atkinson and her Jackson Brody character. I almost gave up at the beginning and at the end. I really didn't like this book too much, but it was propulsive. It's a propulsive mystery. And I'll tell you what I liked and what I didn't like. I almost felt her plotting as she went along, and I thought I'd be satisfied if she can tie up these 4 cases satisfactorily. The characters, they're very well drawn, very unlikable, except for Jackson Brody. That made me keep on reading. I thought about giving it up until he entered the scene, actually. What I hated was the gratuitous and icky sex that was peppered through the book that just turned me off. And I'm not a prude by any means, but just didn't like it. And the book, well written on a sentence by sentence, was rambling. A little bit the way I'm rambling right now. So I apologize for that. Most of all, I hated how she ended the book, as if she was as tired of her characters and wanted to end them as fast as we did. So, yeah, that was I gave that a 3-star because I figured she made me want to read it, even though I was really unhappy after I read it. Then I read Death in the Family, which I kind of like better. Here's a photo of it, and it's by Tessa Wegert. And she's a new author for me. So how did I get here? I was researching locked door mysteries in the beginning of the month, because I thought that I would really enjoy them. And this is definitely a locked door mystery. And it's one thing, it's more of a thriller than it is a mystery. But because we have Shayna Merchant, it's a detective mystery, but it runs toward the thriller aspects of it. But that's okay, because, you know, even Agatha Christie, in a lot of her books, especially And Then There Were None, were basically thrillers, standalone thrillers. But nowadays, I sound like old nowadays, it seems like now we have more thrillers than we have mysteries, and more the kind of mysteries that I like. Anyway, so what is this? You know, I'm not mad that it was a thriller. So Shayna Merchant, it's an interesting, it had an interesting theme to it. She moves to upstate New York after being kidnapped by a serial killer. Now that part was a little, there was a clue, and she would always go back to that time that it was almost like a double story. And so she's still dealing with her demons and is grateful for the sleepy small town surroundings. Dun, dun, dun. She's called to a private island. And that sounds like Then There Were None, with twists. What I liked about it was the surprises that she threw at the reader in each chapter. So every chapter had a cliffhanger. The ending also had the cliffhanger, which I really didn't like, but I think that that this is a series, so I guess that's okay. I think I'll read another of these Shayna Merchant books. I like her. I like her and her partner. And that's important to me, especially in a series. But what I wrote to myself was, please, Miss Wegert, more mystery and fewer twists. Because sometimes with all those twists, it turns into a less good book than it could have been. And like Agatha Christie usually had one big twist that could blow you away, but she had twists and turns, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. But like I said, I finished it, so that's good. Then I started reading. What I started reading was the Nero Wolfe books. The Nero Wolfe mysteries were written by Rex Stout, and I talked about how much I loved his books. And I've read a lot of his books before I started BookTube. And I read three, with Nathan, one of my subscribers, and we had a great time. We read Death of a Doxy, which I'll have here. And this is a fun book because Wolfe actually treats a woman, Julie Jacquet, with respect, and she's a nightclub performer. And I had thought that she was a trans woman when I first read it, just by the way she's described. She's bigger than life, and she calls him Nero. And Wolfe takes a bit of a shine to her, which is unusual since he proclaims to dislike women, or so he says. So the plot is one of Julie's co-workers is murdered in her rather lavish apartment, and it's obvious that she's being kept by a gentleman whose identity is unknown to everyone. And Doxy, as I mentioned in another one of my Mystery Mondays, is not a nice word for a kept woman in those days, which was, I think, the 30s. So one of Wolfe's operatives ends up in jail, accused of the crime, and of course Nero has to get him out of that jam. And the other one I read was Champagne for One. I also talked about this and how much I loved it. These are all like 5-star reads for me. And this was a definite 5-star read. And also there is in this cover, not the one I read, but in this cover, she's dressed to the nines, and it's a very complicated plot that centers around a home for unwed mothers that used to be very popular all over. I shouldn't say popular, but they were around when a girl would get pregnant and her family had the means, she would be sent away for a year to these homes where her baby was adopted, and she would come back like as from a vacation or from Europe or something and just go on with her life. So this takes place in a party for these unwed mothers after they gave birth, and to like give them some self-esteem or introduce them to a different kind of life, and someone dies. And that's all I'll say about it, but it's around that, not only the mystery, but the dancing and Archie and his repartee with Nero Wolfe, his repartee with everyone, including the women, is just a delight. And when I talked about it in my Mystery Mondays, I read an introduction by the great late Lena Horne. What I am going to talk about now are books that I didn't get to yet, that I want to, that some of them in the middle of. One of them is by Amanda Cross, who was in real life, this was a pen name, and I talked about this last week, so I won't go into it too much because I only started it. And the Amanda Cross character her name is Kate Fansler, and she's married to a detective, but she's also like a detective. And I'm really enjoying this book because she's an English professor, and in this book she's kind of sent to a woman's college. I don't know if it's a women's college. I think it is a women's college to investigate a murder. And that's all I've got to already. But I love the writing. It's classy. What do they say about it? They compare her to Dorothy Sayers. She writes with intelligence, grace, and wit, like I said the last time. And it's really true. So I really love this book so far. And so she's a professor sleuth. So, and she's investigating the murder of Patrice, like I said last week, and why her suicide by drowning shocked everyone, even though she was in love with death. So, as I said, it was sweet death, kind death. And I hope to read this before the end of the month, so that's good. And I hope to read also The Devotion of Suspect X. This was part of the Locked Door Mysteries, and it's by Keigo Higashino. And let me see if I can find who the translator is. Translated by Alexandra O. Smith with LCJ Alexander. And it's a Locked Door mystery that whenever I mentioned it on BookTube, people said that it was really good. And a divorced single mother thought she had finally escaped her abusive ex-husband. But when he shows up one day, threatening both her and her teenage daughter, Misato, the situation quickly escalates and he ends up dead on the living room floor, on the apartment floor. And her enigmatic neighbor, Ishigami, a brilliant math teacher whose devotion to Yasuko runs deep, offers to calculate the perfect alibi. So if you like Locked Door mysteries, and I'm going to read this before I have to return it to the library, so that's good. And I just started Patricia Wentworth, The Chinese Shawl, that I talked about, but I'm reading it on Kindle. And I'm starting The Father Hunt by Rex Stout, another Nero Wolfe mystery. This one is about She was 22 years old, a Smith graduate, charming, intelligent, appealing. When she buttonholed Arthur Goodwin, she had a very simple request. And I read about this, I talked about this last time. She didn't know who her father was, but he left her a lot of money. So, as you can see, I am reading a lot this month, and I'm doing a lot of videos. And I think it's really wonderful that also, besides the mysteries that I got into, and there's more than this that I couldn't talk about today, but I read like 30 books. So I will try to tie up some loose ends by the beginning of next month. And I really enjoyed, I want to thank all of the hosts of March Mystery Madness for all their hard work and all the videos that I did watch. I wasn't able to comment on all of them, but they were wonderful, and they're still putting up their their wrap-ups. And I didn't get to really follow all the prompts, or any of the prompts except the one, the find a cover with Dress to the Nines. But I really enjoyed listening and watching to everyone's videos. And I don't know if I'm going to be a host again for March Mystery Madness, because it's madness. But I loved it so much. Mysteries are so special to me, and I always have a mystery on the go, at least one or two. And I'm planning to read The Hunter by Tana French on Kindle next month. So I'm always going to have, hopefully, a literary mystery. And I found out so many more mysteries that I want to read. So I'm always going to have a mystery. But I am getting into so many different kinds of literary fiction, especially that, and plays and Russian literature. So please stay tuned, because there's going to be a lot of other stuff beside mysteries on my channel. So thank you so much for watching this long rambling video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and press the notification bell, and like, and tell me what you think about any of these books, and tell me what you think of Muriel Sparks. Should I keep on with her? Well, I am going to keep on with her, because I think I read the worst. So I want to really see. She was a popular author. She won so many awards, and I really want to, I liked her first book that I read, Far Cry From Kensington. So I really want to give her another chance. But the last book, did I rant enough about that? But until we meet again, please take care of yourselves, and just have a wonderful holiday season that's coming up, that is here right now. And I will come back to you very soon with another video. So until then, I bid you aloha.